Hey guys, sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm having a hard time connecting to the internet in my hotel room. It's 1 a.m., 1:10 a.m. here in Istanbul. But in any case, I'll pick up from where I left off. The last thing I was telling you is a regular practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which إذا أوى إلى فراشيه كل ليلة جمع كفيه. When every time he would lie down in his bed, he would hold his hands together. ثم نفث فيهما فقرأ فيهما قل هو الله أحد. قل أعوذ برب الفلق وقل أعوذ برب الناس. He would recite the last three surahs into his palms, and then he would blow into them, and then he would ثم يمسح بها ما استطاع من جسده. Then he would wipe over as much as he could of his body. وأقبل من جسده يفعل ذلك ثلاث مرات. He used to do this 3 times over. So this is the practice of the Prophet ﷺ to protect himself in the night. Now, the reason I wanted to recite all of these or share all of these narrations, just a couple more that I think are so beautiful. One time the Prophet ﷺ was passing by, سَمِعَ رَجُلًا يَقْرَأُ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٍ. He passed by and he heard a man reciting قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٍ. And the Prophet ﷺ started saying, wajabat. It's become mandatory. It's become mandatory. And they said, ma wajabat. The companion said, what's become mandatory? And he said, wajabat lahul jannah. Heaven has become mandatory as a gift to be granted to that person who was reciting Surah Al-Ikhlas. So it's a really beautiful benefit and a powerful reminder that we shouldn't be lazy in reciting Qul Huwallahu Ahad. And it's the beauty of Quran. Many of you don't know a lot of Quran. You only know like the short surahs, and this is one of those short surahs that you know. Recited with the heart that Allah rewards it a great deal. And of course, I'm a person that believes that the recitation of the Quran, if it's done without contemplation, without trying to internalize the meanings of what's being recited, then you're missing the point. Like, meaning these benefits or the heaven that's being granted or the protection that's being given. None of that actually has any meaning if you're not engrossed in the actual meaning of the message. The Quran is not words to be uttered first and foremost. It is a message to be internalized. So that's my hope, is these few moments that we have together, I share something with you about that. Those of you that just joined once again and don't know who I am this weird guy. His name is Nouman. I talk a lot. And here I am talking again, and this time I'm talking about Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Falaq, and Surah Al-Nas. So just a couple of quick things. Now, the one thing that I wanted to highlight about Surah Al-Ikhlas, before I talk really about the next 2 surahs briefly with you guys, is a word used to describe Allah in this surah that He does not use anywhere else in the Quran to describe Himself. And that's the word As-Samad. It's a unique word to the surah. It's never used anywhere else in the Quran. And so Allah says, Allahu Samad. Allah is, it's translated sometimes Allah the absolute, or Allah the fulfillment of all needs. That's one way of looking at the word samad, the fulfillment of all needs. So I'm going to read some things to you in Arabic and translate them, of what is hopefully giving us some insight as to what as-samad means. Samada as a verb, or samadan, qasadahu, to intend for something, the final goal of something, meaning our goal is to reach Allah Azza wa Jalla. Our goal, our intent in life is Allah's pleasure itself. Allah is the only worthy goal there possibly can be. He's the ultimate qasd. And that's one of the meanings of the word as-samad. It also means whatever goal you have in life, whatever thing you're trying to attain, whether it's relief, whether it's some kind of success, you're trying to graduate from school, you're trying to get a job, you're trying to get married, you're trying to get away from this trouble situation, whatever your crisis may be that you're trying to get towards, or what are you trying to get away from, then that goal cannot be attained unless you go to the one who can fulfill that goal for you, and that would be as-samad. I'm really glad you guys are jumping in once again. Alhamdulillah. And sorry about the technical difficulties in the middle. Once again, I would love to hear from you as I finish this up. I'd love to get your questions also, so in later live posts, I can actually address some of your questions, inshallah ta'ala. That would be something I learned from, is the kinds of questions that you have. Anyhow, so Ibn Abbas was asked, what do you think samad means? And he says, هو السيد الذي يصمد إليه في الحوائج. He is the leader, he is the chief, meaning the authority that you go to in times of need. And this is an important concept. Let's put Allah aside for a second and think about the word just in a language sense, or in a social sense really. When you have a problem, you go to someone who can solve that problem, right? You have a problem with your home or your property, you go to someone who can help solve that problem. You have a criminal problem, you go to the police, you go to the judge or whoever else. If they're not able to solve your problem, you go to the one above them. And then if they can't solve it, you go to the one above them. In other words, you keep going up the hierarchy chain of command until you get to someone who has the power or the authority to solve your problem. Just think of a small example. Like you go to the store and You have a problem with what you bought, and the cashier is not helping you. You say, can I talk to the manager? And if the manager doesn't help, you want to talk to the owner. You keep going up the ladder to address your problem. As-Samad means there's no one higher than him to go to. All needs in the end go back to him, and we don't have to go through someone to take one step and then another step and another step. Actually, we go to him as the ultimate fulfillment of all of our needs. That's the beauty of our connection with Allah, which is why the word As-Samad in a language sense also means Ar-Rafi'u min kulli shay, the highest of all things. There is no higher authority you can connect to. There's no better connection you can have than Allah himself. As-Samad huwa al-alimu bi jami' al-ma'lumat. Samad means the one who knows all the things that need to be known. Meaning when you come to him with your circumstance and you make your case to him, he knows what you said about your situation. He also knows the things you didn't say. He knows the full situation before you even said it. And who can best give you what you need than someone who knows your circumstances better than even you yourself. As-Samad huwa al-Halim. This is really important. Just because somebody can fulfill your needs, somebody has the authority, the ability, the power, the capability to give you what you need, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do it, right? You can go to the judge and say, Judge, I need this, and this. And the judge says, I don't care. That's your problem. I can do it, but I'm not in the mood. That happens all the time. There are people in position of power, but they're not sympathetic to you, right? And so, As-Samad is someone, Al-Halim. He's actually someone who's forbearing, caring, considerate, and he takes into consideration your needs. Once again, by the way, those of you that just joined or accidentally stumbled upon this because your cousin who hates you sent you this link, my name is Nouman Khan, and I like talking about the Quran a lot, and here I am talking about it again. Okay. Anyway, so ذَلِكَ كَوْنُهُ سَيِّدًا يُقْضَى. The other meaning of it is As-Samad huwa Sayyid الَّذِي قَدْ انْتَهَى سُؤْدَدُهُ. Like there's no higher authority than him that you can go to. I mentioned that to you before. The one who made everything, Al-Khaliqu lil-Ashya, has been mentioned as the meaning of the word Samad. Meaning, how can you go to someone to fulfill your needs? Then who would better be qualified to take care of your needs than the one who created you and the things you're in need of? He's the master, the owner of all of them. Okay. Of course, it also means the one who decides, يَحْكُمُ مَا يُرِيد, he does what he wants, and nobody can follow up and question him on his decision. In other words, you're going to someone, once he passes a verdict, nobody can come and undo that verdict. Also, finally, لَا يَقْضِي فِي أَمْرٍ دُونَهُ. It also means someone who, when he makes a decision, nobody can interfere, and nobody has a position to make such verdicts except him. Now, the point of all of that, let me summarize, is that when we call Allah As-Samad, we are saying only Allah can take care of our needs in a way that nobody else can. That human beings, were desperate for the help of Allah, and we acknowledge that by us saying Allahu Samad. Now, why did I start with that? I started with that because it's my understanding, and it's been mentioned by a number of scholars before me in tafsir literature, that the last two surahs of the Quran are actually an explanation of that concept, meaning Allah being the source, the fulfillment of all of our needs, and then two of our most fundamental needs are mentioned. Human beings are vulnerable. They're in danger, and they're in danger from elements from the outside. That's in Surah Al-Falaq. And they're in danger from elements that live inside of them or can penetrate inside of them, and that's in Surah An-Nas. And from both of those, we are in need of protection. It is in fact because Allah is As-Samad that we turn to Him in desperation in these two surahs. So now let's briefly talk about these two surahs and what they have in common, and what they have that contrasts them from one another. So let me highlight that to you first. They both begin similarly, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّي, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّي. But one of them begins, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. The other begins, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. But not only is there a difference between, I seek refuge from the master of dawn, or the master that tears open the light of morning. On the other end, say I seek refuge from the master of all people. In the second surah, there are 3 times the description of Allah. Rabbin Nas, then Malikin Nas, then Ilahin Nas, the master of people, the God of people. But in Surah Al-Falaq, there's only one name of Allah, the master of dawn, the master that tears light open, which I'll dig into in a second. But I want you to note something. In one of them, we called on Allah 3 times as much as the other. You know what that tells you? The second surah is mentioning something 3 times more dangerous, something far profoundly more difficult to deal with, where you are more in need of God's assistance, meaning to turn to Allah as As-Samad and to beseech Him and to call Him and to beg Him 3 times as much as whatever has been mentioned in Surah Al-Falaq. And so we have to look at that perspective. The other interesting thing is, so on the one hand, Allah's names 3 times as many, in Surah Al-Nas as opposed to Surah Al-Falaq. Only one ayah, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. The other interesting thing is, the number of things we're scared of, or the number of things we're seeking protection from in Surah Al-Falaq is multiple. من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. I keep saying wa and enunciating it because it's, I seek refuge from this and this and this and this. Multiple times that we seek seek protection. But in Surah Al-Nas, it's actually one problem that's been described, but it's really just one problem. It's not multiple problems. It's من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس is one description. So on the one hand, Allah's name was one, but the problems were multiple. Like that one name of Allah, if you truly understand it, will solve all those problems. And on the other hand, there are three names of Allah to help you deal with one problem. That's the counterbalance of these two surahs. So now let's dig into that, and as I do, I'd like to encourage you to share, inshallah, and like, and help spread the good that, inshallah, we're trying to acquire by means of this reminder. May Allah accept it from me and from all of you. Now, when Allah says, and this is the part I really wanted to highlight, in Surah Al-Falaq, Allah is telling us to seek refuge from the dark, from night as it becomes extremely dark. And that's a reference to how evil can happen in the night, crimes take place in the night, night is a scary time, and all of those things. But it's also a reference to something more. In the Quran, light is the equivalent of revelation and of Allah. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Fa'aminu billahi wa rasulihi wa nuri alladhi anzalna. The Prophet is called the sun, a brilliant sun. The Quran is called light. Allah is the light of the skies and the earth. Allah pulls believers from darknesses into light. And the night and darknesses in the Quran are the equivalent of misguidance, are the equivalent of ignorance, are the equivalent of evil. So it's not just even physically, literally darkness, but we're also asking Allah from all dark things. Like, shirk, the ultimate evil, in the Quran is described as dhulm. Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. And dhulm in Arabic comes from dhulumat, from darknesses. So even shirk is actually a kind of darkness. And when you come out of shirk, you've come back to the light. Ila nur. Min al-dhulumat ila nur. In any case, so we're asking Allah for protection from all kinds of evil, all kinds of darknesses that are the opposite of our faith. The ultimate faith is قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And now we are asking Allah to protect that faith and not let that faith get corrupted. And so we ask for evils that we can't be, إِذَا وَقَبْ, and they disappear. There are evils we can't even tell they're evils. They just disappear. Just like the night just becomes completely invisible, what's going on inside of it, right? Then we ask Allah for protection from النفاثات في العقد, those who blow into knots, which is people who start believing in superstitions. They start believing in people who do magic on them or cast an evil eye on them, and they become obsessed with this stuff. Instead of Allah being the one who fulfills all of their needs, now they're looking for someone to help undo that spell with some other spell, or what can I recite, or what can I say. And they've even reduced the Quran to just words to be recited to undo spells, and we've fallen into the trap of not looking at Allah as As-Samad. Incidentally, something I deliberately didn't share thus far that is really important for all you guys to understand is the beginning of both of these surahs. قُلْ أَعُوذُ. قُلْ أَعُوذُ. Both these words are so powerful and they're so heavy. When you say, I seek refuge. When you say that, there are a couple of things. One, when you say something, you're not the only one who hears it. Others hear it too. You're not only declaring this to yourself, you're also declaring it to others. In other words, you're letting, and by the way, when you say, I seek refuge, I seek protection, I seek shelter, when you say these things, and I say these things, I'm acknowledging that I'm weak, that I'm susceptible, that I'm not strong enough to protect myself. I've acknowledged my own humility. We are learning just by the word qul that unless we humble ourselves in front of Allah and acknowledge our weakness and openly declare our weakness and our imperfection, that Allah's protection will not come. Otherwise, you just say, أعوذ برب الناس. You don't have to say, قُلْ أعوذ برب الناس. You don't have to do that. But the qul there, that the Prophet ﷺ himself recited, and now it's become a sunnah for us to recite and a part of the Quran, is to remind us of our own weakness. Then there's the word أعوذ, which is translated, I seek refuge, which comes from عوذ, العوذ من اللحم بالعظم. They say in Arabic, when soft flesh clings itself to bone, that's actually called awd. And in Arabic literature, anything that is soft, gentle, brittle, easily breaks, is very delicate, that wraps itself around or finds shelter in something hard and something protective, then that's actually called the act of iyadh. In other words, we're describing ourselves as weak and brittle and fragile.